Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is our first of a very, very special mini-series on the Canary Room. It is imaginatively titled by me, the Masters Series, and Keith's going to blush at this point, aren't you, mate?
Well, I am. I don't know how you could class me as master, I'm sure. But,
well, we do. So what better place to start than the Norwich and Fife Canary Room of Mr. Keith Ferry, a legend on this channel, and not just on this channel, in life in general. So Keith, in a moment's time, we're going to pull all of that knowledge, which you've actually been very generous in sharing with us over about 50 episodes of the show, because that's how many we've done, I reckon.
Well, sometimes it feels like that. We've enjoyed doing them.
We have, mate, we have. And there will be more to come, everyone, so don't worry about that. But today, over the next 20 minutes, half an hour or so, we're gonna cover some ground that we've already covered on building a stud of Norwich Canaries to win on the show bench, but not just for one season. And the whole emphasis of this series is not just, speaking to individuals who've had a good season. It's speaking to individuals who have consistently won and consistently produced quality birds over decades. So stay tuned, lots more to come. Synonymous with the Norwich Canary, you've had success with the Fifes, but we're going to talk Norwich Canaries today. You've a room, and one of the things we were chatting before about was you can hear the noise in the room, and that's always a good sign, isn't it? That's a sign of a healthy stud.
Well, that's it. You hit it on the head there. It's if you go into a bird room and there's no sound there, it's not an healthy stud of birds.
Yeah.
You can hear the sound what's going on at the moment. I mean, there's obviously a lot of young cock birds hurtling away, but you also get hens who are fit, the tootle away.
Yeah.
But if newcomers are into birds and they go and see a breeder, they want to walk in there and hear the sound of the birds. If it's dead silence, then there's something wrong in that bird room.
Yeah. No, and I think that's, first bit of good advice from you, mate. And I know there'll be lots of nuggets, because there always is when we chat, but really important, that, isn't it, the overall health of the bird room? I mean, one of the things, again, you never capture this on camera, everyone, but it's a veritable forest in Keith's room, and there are more. Last time we were here, Keith, there was one piece lily, and they seem to have multiplied.
Well, they have. I think I said last time, I was told that that's the best plant to purify the air. And I took the one, it seemed to be going all right, and then so I went out and bought some more. And we'll see how the things go. But what you do want, you want to come into a bird room, and you don't want to smell that fusty smell of birds, dampness and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It needs to smell fresh, and of course you need the fresh air coming in with your windows and extract, etc. It needs to smell nice and fresh.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing, isn't it? When you're selecting your first stock, that you bring in healthy stock, and you bring in stock which is well looked after, well cared for, because we know that the stress of moving birds can have an impact on them, and it's important that we provide them with the best environment as possible. So Keith, we know that you've kept Norwich for a while. We won't put a year on it, mate, because you still look quite sprightly, but you've kept Norwich for
as nearly as old as you are.
As nearly, yeah. So only 25 years, everyone. And times two. So you kept Norwich for a long time, and we talked in other episodes about the Burbage boys and people that you admired as you were growing up, and obviously supreme champion at the national, when it was the national exhibition of England and the UK. So for the beginner in sort of starting out with Norwich, or someone who wants to build a competitive stud of winning birds, I know one of the things that you'd say to me, and you have said to me, is study the model.
Well, that's true. That's true. But if anybody who's got an eye for the Norwich, who wants to go into the Norwich, they also need a little bit of experience behind them. I don't want to put people off the Norwich, but just as they are a difficult bird to breed and understand. But you need a little bit of experience behind you by keeping something which is more easier to breed.
Yeah.
And then develop onto that. That's my first advice. I've seen so many people who have not been in the hobby whatsoever go straight into Norwich because they like to see the Norwich, to find that didn't breed anything that year. And then the following year they're out of it. So I don't want to encourage people into it who's not had a little bit of experience with breeding canaries.
And I can vouch for that, everyone. And I've bred canaries for 25 years, nearly 30 years now, and they can be quite a challenge, but certainly more than worth it when you produce a nice one.
They're a really rewarding bird when you get a good bird and it goes out there on the show bench and it shows itself, and it'll show itself better than any other canary in my eyes, and that's why it's been doing so well as that, over the years. Often they're best in show or best canary, because if you've got everything right with the type, that's the main thing. Look at that model, that's what you've got to breed to, but then you've got to get the colour right. And you get the colour right, and you have to say to yourself, I've done everything right, and I'm well pleased with this bird. And if you're pleased with it, there'll be other people pleased with it.
Yeah, and I think that's the important dynamic about the Norwich, and is that it's that you can breed the birds, and then you've got to get the colour right on them, as you've said, and that sort of that finishes the bird, doesn't it? You can have a really nice uncolour-fed Norwich, but it's not going to win any shows.
No. I mean, I'm saying that when you look at the standard and the points for colour, there's not that many points for colour. I mean, the main thing is type.
Yeah.
That's what you really got to breed for. But if a bird's got a good colour, it's going to stand out, and it takes the judge's eye, and that's the advantage.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So when it comes to, we know, in your room, and you've built a stud up over several decades. Let's just leave it as several. That's vague enough, mate, isn't it?
That's good enough.
You've built a stud up over sort of several decades, and we know, as we visited you in the canary room over the last 3 or 4 years, we know that you've rebuilt a white line again, so you can. You've been able to build lines and constantly evolve the birds, haven't you? But has it been very much sort of? You've obviously developed the stock. You will bring in the occasional outcross, but from birds that are related to your stud.
Well, that's what I've been doing the last few years. But I mean, if anybody's coming into this, the Norwich line, the Norwich hobby, then obviously you have to start by bringing in a decent stock from a decent breeder who not necessarily has been winning everything everywhere. Just look at what that breeder's doing on the show bench. And if somebody's always in the cards with all his team, even if he's only second, third, you know that line is what you're looking for. And because the judges already, it's near to toe it. I mean, you get some breeders who will breed one good bird and win everywhere, and they think that's the man to go to. But the rest of his team is probably not up to it. So what you're trying to breed is all your birds identically to your cloning as such thing. All the birds look the same, and that's what you want to be going out and seeing those breeders to buy your stock from.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we've spoken about sort of before is then and I guess the challenge with some of the bigger variety of birds is the number of pairs, because you will strike cocks with more than one hen, but mainly you pair breed, don't you?
Well, again, going back to the beginning, I wouldn't advise to bring, a cockbird with more hens, because you need the experience behind you. I mean, I do it, but I won't go more than a couple of hens with a cockbird. And I really like true pairs, because once they're bonded and they're producing, you just let them get on with it. I mean, have one or two spare hens, and if a cockbird is, the hen's sitting and the cockbird is not doing a lot, just looking after his mate, then you can put him down to another hen. But for a beginner, is true pairs, and that's what I would advise until you've got experience of breeding Norwich.
And I think one of the things, and I've had this conversation about sort of different varieties of canaries, and I think it's probably true as well in the Norwich, which is when it comes to breeding, one of the sort of key things to establish a stud is to have a pool of young birds to select from, and a good pool of young birds in terms of quality most importantly, but also some numbers as well, because what you don't want to do, I think you can, I've seen it where, people have gone to somebody, they've bought, 4 or 5 pairs to get themselves started, and then they've bred some nice birds, and maybe they've kept a few sort of inferior birds to meet the numbers. And I think I'm of a view, and I don't know whether you agree, that sort of degrades the stud over a period of time, and it goes down rather than up, and you want it going up.
No, I mean, if you're starting a stud, then and you're happy with what you bought, you keep with that breeder if you need more stocking. If you're going to buy birds in from different breeders, even if they've been winning, you dilute the bloodline and the pedigree, and you need to keep going to that same breeder and just bring an odd bird in. If eventually you need to go away from that to another breeder, you've got to buy the best bird it can possibly sell you. Yeah. No good just go and say, I'll have one of your surplus birds. It's actually got to be probably better than the birds you're breeding.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you go down a step instead of going up a step. Yeah.
And I think the key thing to building that line, as you've done, is every year is progress, isn't it? And you're looking for that. Even in, with someone with your decades of experience, you're seeing progress year in, year out with the birds.
Well, that's what you try to achieve, to keep building on it and improving every year. But the main thing is to keep that line stable. It's no good, going downhill, not breeding with an inferior bird.
Yeah.
I mean, just because it's related, but it's got a lot of faults, then it's no good to you.
No.
You got to pair your best to best all the while, and the relationship to it. Yeah. But at times, and then they can get fairly close. That's when you have to bring an outcross in.
Yeah.
But that outcross has got to be an outstanding bird.
Yeah.
You've got to more or less twist somebody's arm to get that outstanding bird.
Yeah.
But like you said, I've got, a lot of my birds have gone to different breeders who I'm quite friendly with. I can bring a bird in if I want.
Yeah. And I think that's important, isn't it? That sort of network of fanciers where you can pull something back the following year or years down the line. And I think for people who, it's been a consistent theme of the top breeders that we've visited, in that, they work in their own room, they work very much fixed on creating that bird, and you must go to sleep at night with that picture of that Norwich in your head, and
one way of trying to get to sleep is think, where are we going to pair this up and that up? And sometimes you can lay there all night thinking about it, but yeah.
But it is, Keith. It's that dedication which I think, and putting the time into the birds, and I'd say you've retired now, but you've never met a busier man than this man here. But, you know, even through your working life, and you had, you know, a very important job, you worked hard, you worked long hours, but you managed to maintain a very, very competitive Norwich stud during that time. And that's down to hard work and dedication, mate.
Well, I've always said, you know, you don't get anywhere unless you put the time in. And looking back, perhaps my family suffered a little bit through it, because I spend an awful lot of time here. And when I was at work, away from home 12 hours a day, so having to feed them in the morning very early and feed them at night time, I did spend a lot of time here. But it's like anything. It's playing golf, it's playing snooker. The only way you're going to get there is to put the time in.
Yeah, and I think that is really important. And I guess the other thing, because you know, talking to lots of really sort of top breeders, and some will say, oh, you know, it's all about the cockbirds, and actually others will say, no, you need really good hens, and then many of them will say you need really good cocks and hens. But when you're selecting your team for the following season, you'll often pair an unflighted and a flighted together, won't you?
Yeah. Well, you said it earlier on that the way forward is keep young stock. You know, you don't want to keep, just because it's got sentimental reasons and stuff like that, you don't want to keep birds too long. Keep that young stock. Because if you did have a problem, and it don't have to be because for the birds, it could be something else comes into your room. You could have a virus come in and you lose one or two, and you could finish up with not breeding anything. But if they're all old birds, they're going to be even older than what you got left the following year. So I like them to keep young stock. I mean, cock birds you can keep for 2 or 3 years. Hen birds, if they're exceptional, I breed with them for a couple of years. But then I'll pass them on to hopefully let somebody else try to breed some decent birds from them. So I try to keep young stock going all the while, in case you have a major problem.
Yeah. No, I think that's as always sage advice, and I think sort of keeping that stock sort of fresh. You've got a contingency, haven't you? Because the worst thing that could be is you've spent decades building the stud and then something catastrophic happens.
I mean, for instance, this year there was a cockbird, a variegated cockbird I bred last year, which I really liked and was having big hopes on. I never bred a youngster from it. I didn't say I'm going to let it go. I'm going to give it another chance this year.
Yeah.
Because he is fit. He was a young bird. He probably didn't know what he was doing, like a young lad. He's going to mature for another 12 months, and I'm going to give him another chance. And I'm sure he will fill eggs next year.
Yeah. No, and I think that's one of the other things, isn't it, with birds, is they're not a one-season bird. And there are times when you'll think, well, okay, I haven't got anything out of this, but I will, as you've said, you'll persevere and you'll give it a go the following year.
Yeah.
For somebody sort of starting out, Keith, I think we've talked before about the kind of number that you need to breed, and they're not easy to breed, and they're not easy to get numbers out of. But if you were saying to somebody to sort of have in their head a figure of quality Norwich that they want to breed to keep the stud moving forward, have you got a number that sort of...
Well, I've always said in the past, I mean, if you're going to go forward, you've got to breed, a minimum of 40 youngsters.
Yeah.
So probably select 10 out of that for your keeping.
Yeah.
If there's 10 birds out of that 40 which look as same as their parents or better, then that's the way forward. And again, the way forward is if the youngsters are better than parents, then the parents you can afford to let go and keep the youngsters and keep going up the ladder that way.
Yeah.
And that's what I've done in the past. I've said earlier that keeping birds for sentimental reasons don't pay. If the youngsters, the quality of them youngsters are good, then you can afford to let them go.
Yeah. And it's that kind of focus, and I think, everyone watching the show, it's that kind of focus that that separates the top champions from the sort of the hobbyists, in that you will have birds that naturally you're attached to, but yeah, I don't like to use the word ruthless, but it is it's focus, isn't it, Keith?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, these Norwich, and I've said it more than once in this interview, that they are a difficult bird to breed. I don't want to put nobody off them at all, because they do give you joy when you are seeing them. They will feed the youngsters if you let them. I mean, with this type of bird, for any newcomers, you have to keep the feeders to guarantee you're going to rear those youngsters, because you need those youngsters for the following year. So I'll always, advise, make sure you got some mongrel top canaries to rear these birds up, especially the first round. You could certainly, try them on the second round, but these Norwich will rear. And there's nothing more rewarding to see those birds rear. And this year I've had more Norwich reared around youngsters than I have done for quite a number of years. So, that's one step I'm working on now, a self-rearing stud of birds, as well as the quality.
Yeah, and I think that's important, isn't it? If we can get that in there, get that back in there. Then that's important. And it's important for the Norwich as a breed overall to be back there, because there isn't, as we've seen on camera here, there is nothing better than watching a cock and hen Norwich absolutely pump youngsters with food.
They will. They'll fill the crops up. You can't beat them if they are feeding. So it's only over the years we've bred it out of them. But the other thing I'd like to say is for newcomers coming into this, so they want to build a good stud up, and I'm saying you need at least 40. Don't go ahead and have 10, 20 pair to breed that 40. You've got to keep down to a nice, steady stud of birds you can manage. And it's all about management.
Yeah.
Right? Even with 10 pair, you can breed 40 easy if you manage them right. Don't go and have quantities of breeding stock to try to breed that 40. You can get it from 8 pair.
Yeah.
If you get those birds right, and with less pairs you got more time on those pairs.
Yeah.
The more you have in your bird room, the more you're running around like an headless chicken. Oh, there's a problem there, there's a problem there. Get young birds, get them on, bred, get them on the sticks, and then think for what you're doing the following year. Yeah. Always thinking a year ahead of yourself.
Yeah, and I think, two pieces. I mean, we expect nothing less from you, mate. But 2 pieces of really, really good advice there. Don't fill your cages to start with, and keep 20 pairs. Like you say, 8 pairs you'll get and 8 quality pairs you'll get some decent birds out of. And then also that time aspect of, if you've got a finite amount of time, if you divide that time by the number of birds you've got, the more birds you've got, the less time each bird gets. And these birds, as I know only too well, these birds need that time.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this bird room's full of birds at the moment, and it is long. It's too much for me. But the only reason this bird room's full of birds is the years of experience of that.
Yeah.
And newcomers into it will not get that experience in 12 months. It takes time.
Yeah. And I think that's it really as a sort of summing up point, mate. It's patience, isn't it? The bird hobby, and when you're looking at building a stud of canaries and a stud of beautiful Norwich as you have, we are in a world where there's almost a desire for instant success, and you can have instant success, but actually if you want to build a stud of birds, you're making a commitment which lasts over a number of years, not just 1 or 2 years.
No, that's right. You ain't going to be at the top of the ladder overnight. It takes time to get up each step.
Yeah. Well, listen, everyone, if you've enjoyed our Little Masters series, there is at least another 12 videos of me and this man talking all things Norwich on the channel. So you will get to see them, watch them and watch them again. They are full of advice on trimming, on preparing, on colour feeding, on hand washing and everything. So if the Norwich is the bird that you choose, and frankly, why wouldn't it be? This man has given lots of his time, and we will be back here again very soon to do another episode with this lovely human being.
Well, we've enjoyed doing them, Matt, and I've enjoyed passing on my knowledge to fanciers of all ages, of all knowledge they've had, but mainly what I'm trying to get is newcomers into the hobby, and hopefully they go for the Norwich, because in my eyes there is no better canary than the Norwich.
Straight from the horse's mouth, that. I'm certainly not going to disagree with him. If you've enjoyed the video, hit a like. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and every time we put a video out, you'll get a notification.
I wish everybody in the fancy good luck and good breeding, good showing, and keep this hobby going.
Super stuff.